So, who are you guys? Where did you come from, and how did you meet?
We are honestly. I'm Eric.
I'm Dalton. We're best friends. We met each other about 10, 11 years ago now,
10 years
and
ago.
we met in middle school. We started a band together. We were doing like kind of metal music, and that band eventually broke up.
Yeah, that lasted about 5 years after that, and then I went to college. We kind of went our own separate ways. Life kind of took over. After that, him and I didn't really speak that much, and then about 3 years ago, this week is when him and I kind of reconnected. We just kind of became best friends after that. Yeah, we shared a love for the same genre of music. We were both into indie pop music, and like EDM and stuff like that. So it was kind of funny because like before, like we used to like not really agree that much on music tastes and preferences and things like that. And I remember I was in his apartment and he had this song on, and I was like, dude, what is this, man? Like we kind of had that exchange, and yeah, it was just like such a beautiful thing, like right from the start, like that day where we first reconnected.
When it comes to the band itself, like honestly, and how you came up with the name and everything, how did that exactly form to the idea that you were like, all right, let's start a band, like let's do this again after all those years? And then how did it gain its name, to be honestly?
It was never like, oh, we should make a band. It's like, no, we should get you out of this rut and do something productive, kind of something we used to do, music, write and record music.
Right.
But let's do it with this new genre that we both share a love for.
Just through a conversation one morning, like 7 o'clock in the morning, sitting at my desk, Eric and I were talking, and we were on this topic of like, our lyrics are like brutally honest, because that was something that Eric always pushed for when we were writing, because the majority of the writing was, again, like kind of therapeutic for me. It was in lieu of going to therapy, so to speak. And Eric was always pushing me to be like really literal and honest in our lyrics.
It's kind of weird because it was like a very, very private conversation every time, and it was very deep, and it was very, I mean, I saw my buddy at his most broken, right? So we turned every private conversation to this public thing as songs.
And I like that because at the end of the day, exactly what you guys said, it's honest, that's basically what it is. And I like that. Yeah, I don't know. I like that aspect. And I think a lot of musicians, I respect that with them, is when there is such intimate value to not only the band itself, but, their work. Which is what I've noticed within your guys' songs, and especially knowing the backstory, because, Brandon had told me a little bit about it the other day. So when you guys started the band and knew that, okay, we're actually going to do this and we're going to make some music, was there any, end goal or intention that you wanted to get to, or it was more of just like, I'm having you heal through this and I want you to heal, and, we're just going to do it because we love it?
I think that when we first started the project, there were no goals at all. We didn't even, like we said, we didn't even plan on making this into a band or anything that we were going to share with the world. As it started to steamroll and become something more than just a healing process and become like a project that we wanted to share with people, our expectations for what we wanted to get out of the project were admittedly very low. And I think that to a large degree, like sometimes they still are, because
We're a very young band.
And Eric's a nurse, and I work in banking, and
So we all have lives out of this.
we do have lives outside of this. So I think that like as it grows, our expectations are growing, but at the baseline, our expectations were just like, hey, we did this really cool thing, and we want people to hear it because it's cool.
No, absolutely. All right, so you guys have 2 songs out right now, which are, would you like to say the titles of those?
Loved by You and NYC.
So behind those 2 songs, I guess, what were the stories behind those 2, and what about those 2 songs specifically were you like, all right, yeah, I want to release these? Because I know as musicians, especially when it comes to albums and such, you go through so many songs and you're like, I don't want to have this in the album, I don't think this is going to take. So what was about those 2 songs that you felt you were, I guess, confident enough to release them?
Right, because they're kind of separate stories about us, respectively.
Things,
yeah. So Loved by You was written in late May. That was the very first song that we ever slapped honestly onto. I started writing for that about my own personal experience. I think it's the only song that we have out thus far about my personal experience. It was about basically like a girl that I fell in love with in college, and I was kind of going through a rough patch with reconciling graduating from college and like not being able to see her and whatnot, and thinking about what had happened the past year and how I felt about it. So I decided to write about it, and it became the subject matter of Loved by You. But the sound of Loved by You, that kind of indie pop, slightly inspired by the 80s, is the exact type of music that we were into at the time. So I started kind of making the bones of the song, took some parts of a session that him and I did like a year before, some guitar parts he wrote, some parts that I wrote, and I just showed it to him. It really was just like a kind of like a surprise. We never really planned to do that.
Yeah.
But I just showed it to him, and he liked it a lot, and I was like, okay, so let's kind of do something with this. Let's do something with this rather. Again, at that point, it still wasn't like, okay, this is going to be the first song for our band. It wasn't like that. It's just like, okay, this is going to be our first song collaborating together. You know what I mean?
3 or 4 years.
In 3 or 4 years. And we showed our friends. They loved the sound. I loved the sound. Kept working on it. And yeah, that was basically the...
Yeah. I would say that Love by You predated any conception or writing of the band. Eric
Absolutely.
came to me with the idea. The final form of it has some of my production on it, you know, and like some of the sound design that I added to it, because it was much more electronic pop when in Eric's first form, and maybe we should put the original version on SoundCloud,
the demo.
It'd be fun.
It's already on SoundCloud.
Yeah, because again, Eric was doing like a indie pop, electronic pop thing on his own prior to this. So he was taking a lot of different influence. I have always been really obsessed with the sounds of the 80s. I grew up, my dad was lived in that era. He came from like the early punk days and like Iggy Pop, and then transitioned through new wave. So like I grew up a lot of that stuff. So I love those sounds, and added some of those onto Love by You. But yeah, Love by You predated the majority of the project. The other single that's out, NYC, we'd written this album, and we originally intended to release it in August of 2019. But after we were going through the mixing process, one morning at work, which is where all my brilliant ideas come to me when I'm sitting at work, I said to myself, holy shit, this song needs a music video. The song is called San Francisco. And I called Eric. I walked outside of the office and I called Eric. It was like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, hey, Eric, like we need to get on an airplane and go to San Francisco and shoot a music video for the song. It just needs to happen. And that was where Burke, our manager and creative director, came into the picture. Eric, Burke, and I used to play in bands together. Our old band used to play with Burke's band. He was in the metal scene. And I remember that Burke did videos, so I called Burke. And I was like, hey, this is kind of a crazy idea, but like, would you get on an airplane and come to San Francisco with us and shoot a music video? And he said yes. So once we started doing that and developing the project more than just like sound and an album, things started to get delayed, and we started to say to ourselves, okay, well, it doesn't really make sense to release this album right now. Like maybe we should start writing something a little bit smaller. We kind of determined like we should do a single or an EP or something like that. It was funny to look back and say that like in the lineage of what will be the album, NYC came later in the story. And NYC, I think, definitely sums up the sound of the album a little bit better than Love by You, sonically, because we had already written the album. We were already familiar with some of the sounds that we wanted to use and the influences that we were putting into our music. So
it was already kind of fully formed.
Yeah, because again, Love by You had predated when we started writing the album. So like a lot of our influences that you hear in NYC are what you will hear in the album when it does.
Yeah, because we kind of revisited that.
So that's cool to hear personally, because I love when artists fall into their sound. And I even noticed that like hearing progressively through Loved by You in New York City and the one that you have coming out. I'm excited for the album now, because even, you know, with other artists, is they always say that there's comes a point where they feel like they've found themselves sonically. And that's such a cool spot because you get to play around with so many different sounds that kind of reside within that. So I guess we'll get into the project that you have coming out now. So if you guys want to talk about that song and the title of it and like where that came from, because that song that's a single, but is that one of the songs that will be on the album?
In the next 10 to 12 weeks, there are 3 singles coming out. They're all from the album. It's a 10-track album, so it's definitely a full length. This is the 3rd track on the album. It's called Inside Your Eyes, and chronologically, it was the first song that Eric and I wrote together in this like therapeutic writing session.
Yeah. Collaboratively in the
like,
same room
after my breakup. And it was the first time that he and I had like sat down and tried to write together since our old band. And the way that we used to write in the old band was very different. We'd sit in, you know, our practice space, and he was behind the drums and I was there with the guitar, and
Yeah.
we would literally just like re-rehearse the same part over and over and over again until there was a 3 or 4 minute song.
Yeah, it's like very much in real time.
And this was the first time that we had tried to write together through a virtual process, both like recording things and sending them to each other, and sitting in a room like multi-tracking in real time, as opposed to like writing something full in a practice space and then like going and recording it later.
Right, because this type of music is always written on a laptop. You know what I mean?
So I think that Eric and I disagree with this a little bit, but like it was one of the harder songs for us to write, I would say. It took us probably the most time of all of the songs on the full-length album, just because we were trying to find ourselves and like learn how to work with each other again. And there were probably 15 choruses to the song before we finally settled on one.
It was definitely, I do agree with that, because it was very tough to write a hook to it.
Yeah. You wanted to kill me.
Yeah, it was crazy. I remember, but it's important to know that the hook that we ended up keeping and the vocal take that we ended up keeping was in your basement downstairs, and from that night where we were just writing and trying to figure out the hook. So we got the right one, and we just kind of pieced it together, and now it's this.
Yeah, we tracked that hook, and we finally wrote that hook at probably like 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
We had been together since like 7 p.m. the day before.
Yeah, it took a very long time.
So yeah, it was definitely laborious, I think the word is. So the song, the album chronologically follows the story of my relationship, and this song is focused on kind of that fireworks, like spark in your stomach that just like radiates through your veins when you're starting to fall in love with somebody. You know that you're falling in love with this person, and you can like hardly control your emotions about them, but it's very early on in the relationship. And I think that a lot of people experience that, where, you know, they're wondering, is this like this early on like lustful attraction to the person, or am I actually feeling these like really visceral emotions? And it's following one specific night in a relationship, following just this like really like fireworks night that still vividly sticks in my mind. I guess there's some anxiety in the lyrics of the song about like wanting so badly to like progress this relationship forward.
I love that. That's a really cool idea. I love the aspect too that it's going to follow this story between you guys. That's a really, really cool thing. And that's what I find so fun about being an artist, is being able to play around with stuff like that and being able to be creative in the situation.
Yeah.
And then, so you guys made a music video for this.
We did.
I guess, what was the process of, you know, figuring out what you wanted to execute as the idea? Because, you know, with music videos, there's so many and there's so many different stories. So when you guys were kind of discussing, you know, what you're going to do with it, did you want it to, you know, correlate with the song and the meaning, or did you want it to have more of like that fun feeling? Because I noticed exactly what you said about how it was that exciting feeling of falling in love. That's what I got from the video, was that almost visual aspect of that emotion. So yeah, what was the creative process for you guys to figure out what you wanted it to look like?
By the time we shot this music video, we had already done 3 music videos. So we were already starting to become comfortable doing multimedia, which was not something Eric and I had ever done in the previous project, which was interesting. And I was having a lot of fun with that. You know, Eric has a lot of creative license around the production and the engineering of our music, and a lot of what you hear in the songs, outside of like some of the synth sound design and some of like the textures of the guitars, is Eric. And I've had the ability to have a lot of creative license with some of the like start of ideas. And then, you know, we've been fortunate enough to work with Burke very closely on all of our music videos. So, you know, we knew that we wanted this video to be a mix of live and action. We didn't want the whole thing to be action, the whole thing to be live performance shots. And we knew that we wanted it to be pretty literal to the story. Beyond that, what ended up being the final version of the video was a lot of collaboration between all of us. When we first started doing this video, Burke and I sat on the phone for probably 4 or 5 hours one night, trying to pick locations and like discuss the idea. And then he went and he started working with his producer on developing what ended up being the final shots. I think we wanted to play down the seriousness of the music video because we had done a few other music videos that are like either a little bit more serious or a little bit more racy or something to that extent. But I'm gonna hand it over to Burke now to kind of elaborate on how the creative like visuals of it ended up coming together.
Yeah, so like Dalton said, I mean, there was a lot of back and forth in the beginning about, you know, figuring out location and exactly what we wanted to do concept wise. But then, like, visually, I guess from like a you know, cinematography standpoint and maybe a directing standpoint, the choices that we made as far as like lighting and everything, like the overall, I don't want to give too much away with, because I know that this is going to come out before the video comes out, but the overall thing is that the band is supposed to be entertaining the evening of this couple. And we wanted to basically have the band playing like a show with their live set. And their live set, they have a lot of, you know, lights and everything integrated into it, and it's all midied out, and it goes with the music. It's super cool. So we knew we wanted to do that and focus on that for their portion. There was this back and forth between Dalton and I as far as like wardrobe with what the band was gonna wear. And I wasn't really about it until like we actually executed it, and I'm actually happy that we did because it makes a lot of sense.
And I noticed too, I was going to play into it without giving stuff away, but absolutely, like exactly what you said. I like the wardrobe for it, and I'm excited for people to see it because I feel like it fits your guys' sound and what you're going through and what you guys.
Yeah,
As well.
it's retro. Yeah, it's retro, but formal and fancy. You know.
To go on to something else too was, you know, when you were creating the idea for it, what I got from it was that excitement of, even within the lights, with all the production of it, was that excitement of what the song means, you know, not so much just like, I guess playing off the lyrics, but more showing that visual to the emotion. So was that something that you played into when you were creating, is, okay, I want to almost emphasize this emotion for people to understand when they're listening to the song?
Yeah, I mean, my idea was to be as like straightforward as possible with kind of what the concept was in the most like raw, organic way possible to show that emotion. And I feel like that with the point in a relationship that Dalton is talking about, I feel like that is probably relevant for a lot of people, like that type of situation. And the idea with the lights and everything, like I said, is to kind of tie into the band's performance. And that's why the concept shots for the couple, like the lighting is a little artsy. There's like neon lights and everything. It's just to kind of tie everything together as one whole cohesive piece, just to give it that mood and everything. Because I think that's really important with music videos, is to match the mood for what the band is trying to, you know, achieve visually and brand wise. And that's something that we've always been very conscious about, especially with Honestly. And actually something to kind of even go further in with the edit is we put like, I don't want to say like a filter, but that's probably the best word to describe for people who are going to understand this video or who are watching. We put this kind of filter over it to make it dreamy and kind of hazy, because that's something that I kind of correlate to those moments in a relationship, is they're very hazy and dreamy, and they have very warm and fuzzy feelings. So that was another visual representation that we did in that. So just trying to do, yeah, as much as we can, like lighting wise, edit wise, and then you know, design of the set as much as possible to kind of tie into the concept and the story.
100%. I get that too. I that was something that I took away from it as well, as, you know, watching, especially talking to you guys. And I think that's going to be a really cool aspect for your fans and followers, is, you know, it's always so kind of rewarding as a fan to feel closer. And I think that's why we do a lot of these interviews, is for artists to be able to connect with their fans, because a lot of the time it's just behind a screen, you know, like you don't really get to connect with them on this kind of level of like understanding their creative process. But I that was one thing that I liked about it, was that haziness of, it's almost like magical. So when it comes to the album, and future stuff, would you want to definitely do more music videos within the album? Like, are you going to do one for every song, or are there any specific ones that you don't have to give it away, but are you going to do more in the future?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, obviously, yeah. But for the album itself, did you really want it to be like a visual thing as well, or?
I'll let Burke and Eric elaborate a little bit more, but I'll just say yes. I think that the ability to create multimedia to express our art is like of paramount importance to us. And the ability to incorporate photography and graphic design and video in our attempt to express ourselves is just as important as creating like really cool textural sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the whole visual aspect of things is equally as important as the sound. Everybody's listening to the music on their phone, but like when you're on Instagram or anything like that, everybody's so like digitally connected, and everyone's looking at photos, everyone's looking at videos. Like it's so much. I feel like music kind of commands you to feel something. You know what I mean? When you can't really see it. And then when you have that type of art in conjunction with a visual type of art, whether it be photography or videography or anything like that, it just kind of contributes to the emotion that the art's trying to convey. Especially because everything we write about is so relatable, you know what I mean? And everyone has gone through it. I think we both want people to feel personally addressed when they listen to our music and watch our videos, and kind of feel like, oh, that could have been me like a few months ago or years ago with this dude or with this guy or whatever, you know what I mean? I feel like everybody has been in Dalton's shoes or my shoes whenever we're talking about our respective stories. But when it's kind of blasted on like the big screen with like all these lights and all these effects and like these like pretty actors and stuff like that, it kind of just highlights the fact that oftentimes things in real life can be cinematic. Maybe not to everybody, but to you. So it kind of just highlights those like real moments in life that can be cinematic, and we kind of write about those moments.
Overall, yeah. I mean, I personally love the song and I love the video, just because I think it exactly does what Eric was saying, is it portrays that feeling and makes you feel connected and makes people feel like, oh, I've been through that before and this is what it feels like. And I like that. So I guess I'll go to Burke again. As a creator, is that an important aspect for you, is to be able to, have people be related, I mean, like for them to watch it and be like, oh, I've been through that. You know what I mean? Like, because I know some music videos that I've seen in the past, they'll paint a picture that maybe isn't too realistic. And something I noticed within your guys' music is it is honest. It's exactly what your band name is. So I guess for Burke, is that an important aspect for you, is creating something that, is, trying to think how to put it.
Relatable?
Yeah, relatable. Yeah, pretty much relatable, but obviously doing it in, a dramatized way.
Yeah, no, I think it's important, for me at least, to have something visually that is relatable. I mean, a big thing with music videos and just video in general that I think is really important, and as I kind of progress further and further in my career, I think story is extremely important, and pretty shots aren't always going to be, it's not always going to be the end all be all, and a lot of the times people aren't going to be able to connect to that. So you could have like the coolest looking music video, coolest shots, coolest lighting, production, all that stuff. But if there is no story, if there's no like meat and potato substance, somebody might not connect to it. And if that's, a big thing with music videos is it's not my job to always create a story. A lot of the times I am brought into that role, but my job is to help the artist tell their story in a visual way. So I'm not going to, tell them, like, I'm going to give them my advice on how they can better visually tell the story, but I'm not going to change their story if it's something that is true to them. If that's something that they want to portray and they want to be honest about and they want people to relate about, then I have to do my best as a director to help them visually tell that story so that other people can relate to it on a visual aspect and, through hearing as well.
Absolutely. So I guess another question is, when you guys are creating music videos, and I guess even with the song, is it something that you have to be finished with the song fully before you even start thinking about what you want to do for a music video? Or is it something that as you're writing, you're thinking about ideas of a music video, and is it coming to you? Because I know for me, I'm a very visual artist. So whether I'm listening to music or creating any kind of project, I usually have this visual in my head. So as you guys create, and as you, I mean, this goes for all of you, you know, when you're making a music video or thinking about things you want to release with the song, especially with this one, was it something that you created as you were writing the lyrics, or was it something that was done with the final mix?
Sometimes the story of the video comes with or as a result of the song itself and material of the song. But in the case of the NYC music video, that was a discussion mostly between Burke and us, just of like a really cool video idea that we had that would convey this mood that we knew we wanted to write about, but the song wasn't done yet when we started developing the ideas for the video. So it can happen either way, I would say. There's a video that you'll see in a couple months that is definitely 150% a direct result of the song and of the story that it's trying to convey. But then, like in the case of NYC, it happened the other way around.
Now, when it came to specifically this new song, was it something that came out of in the process, or was it like we finished a song, now we have the ideas for it?
The song was done for at least 6 months before we even started talking about doing a video for this. We definitely were inspired or had more creative license on this video as a result of our previous music video shoots, because we had already done some different things and we had already shot videos of certain styles. So we felt like we had a little bit more creative license to kind of change up how this one was telling the story. But yeah, the video definitely came much after the song. But again, as we mentioned earlier, it's a direct telling of the story that is in the song. So yeah, while the video and the writing of the video came after the song was already mastered, it definitely paints the exact picture that we were trying to paint while we were writing the song.
Yeah, it's pretty literal.
So what is exactly next for you guys? So you have the album coming out, which you don't have to say dates or anything, but what is next for you guys? Do you want to end up, doing live shows? Do you want to do more, that kind of stuff? Do you want to tour? All that kind of stuff, So I guess you can take that from there.
So we actually played our first and last show in late January.
First and only.
First
not
and
last.
Well, this is the last show we played. We did have a show planned for this month, but obviously it didn't happen. It would have been quite a great show. But yeah, we absolutely, as soon as we can, as soon as we're legally able to, we're definitely gonna get out and play more shows. Definitely gonna tour once we have enough time vacated. You know what I mean? And we kind of really want to do as much as possible with this. Really. I mean, as like looking at it now. Compared to the idea that we originally had, like before we started the band, like it was like supposed to be like a little, art project, whatever.
Side project kind of thing.
You know what I mean? Like this is a passion project now for both of us, and we feel so strongly about it. So we're gonna do anything: tour, shows, more videos, more records. We're just gonna do it until we don't really want to anymore, right? I feel that way. But as we're sitting here right now, I feel like we couldn't be more enthusiastic about what's going on and what we have planned. You know what I mean? So yeah.
So singles are coming out next, then the album, and then pending the coronavirus and the nationwide quarantine.
Don't say that word.
Maybe some.
No, we're gonna look back at this interview one day, and you guys are gonna be so far ahead, and it's gonna be like, oh, remember that?
Yeah.
Our kids are gonna be reading about the coronavirus quarantine in their history textbooks, and we're gonna be like, "Hey, we lived it, and we couldn't play shows."
Yeah, we made an album in that time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we released an album.